I was a high school senior on the cusp of college, fresh out of my last year of classes. During that final stretch, I had a job working for my grandfather, essentially acting as a farm manager. He'd give me instructions on what needed to be done around the farm when he wasn't around, mostly feeding the cows. It was early November, and that's when baseball practice after school kicked in, running from 3:25 to 5:30 p.m. By the time I got to the farm, the sun was already dipping low toward the horizon. One day, after I'd changed into my work clothes, filled a bucket with feed, and started on the first batch of cows, I realized I'd forgotten the key to the other pasture. Annoyed, I had no choice but to haul 2 buckets at once and walk from the gate to the trough, a good 40 yards away. As I trudged along, trying to keep my spirits up, I started whistling. Nothing in particular, no real tune or pattern, just something I made up on the spot. When I looped back and set the last buckets in the truck bed, I heard a sound from the adjacent lot. It was whistling. Weird, I thought, since no one lived anywhere near that plot, and it sounded so close. I chalked it up to a mockingbird or something and went about my business as usual. Over the next few days, I stopped whistling, but the sound kept coming. Gradually, over those days, it got clearer until it sounded like regular old whistling. Eventually, it grew louder. At first, when I'd heard it, it was so faint I'd almost missed it amid the crunch of my boots heading back to the truck. In the last couple of days, I'd gotten used to it, even started looking forward to it. Then one day, it didn't show up, and I felt a twinge of disappointment. This time, I'd remembered the key and made it to the gate, fumbling through the ring. When I dropped them into the grass, I muttered, "Damn it." I crouched down and started groping around for them. That's when I heard a faint sound from across the fence, a low groan or growl. It was building. At that point, I wasn't scared, just curious about what the hell was going on over there. I left the truck idling a short distance from the neighboring lot, took a few steps along the road, and hopped the fence into it. The land sloped straight up from there, thick with woods that got denser the higher you climbed. Looking back now, I realize I made several huge mistakes that could have gotten me hurt. As I pushed up the hill, the growl popped up now and then. It was pretty far up ahead, so it stayed faint like before. As I went, a strange stench started hitting my nose, a mix of garbage and wet dog or something like that. I caught another sound just as I neared the crest of the hill. Damn it! A raspy, low, distorted voice. It came from just a few yards in front of me, sounding like a 60-year-old chain smoker drawling out "damn it" real slow, like they didn't quite know English or something. I immediately figured someone was trespassing on our land, and now I started getting anxious and rattled. I slowed my pace, not wanting the guy to hear me before I spotted him. I kept going and paused to listen. Then I heard it again. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. The guy was repeating it normally now. No more drawn-out, creepy, broken English vibe. I hunkered down on a log, listening, trying to figure out what to do about this intruder. He kept looping the word, and I noticed his tone pitching higher, the inflection shifting. Then it hit me, the bastard was mimicking me perfectly, the pitch, the cadence, everything. He even nailed the frustration in my voice when I'd said it. Now I was pissed and terrified. I stood up and charged toward the top of the hill. I flicked on my phone's flashlight. Hey, this is private property. I got cut off mid-sentence as I crested the rise. The weak beam barely lit up a shape crouched naked just a few yards ahead. His eyes caught the light, glowing in the dimness. Right away, something fell off. This wasn't a normal person. His neck was unnaturally long, and as I climbed the last bit, he retracted it and twisted his head to face me without moving his body. His eyes were oversized, his head big and tapered. He was squatting like a ballerina in point. I scanned his body, emaciated, ribs poking through taut skin. There was a brief silence, and then like a robot, he pivoted in the leaf litter and slowly rose to his full height, arms dangling at his sides. I was questioning whether this was even human. He was too tall to be. Damn it, he said in my voice. I whipped around and bolted down the hill. It didn't feel like running. It was more like my legs were on autopilot, propelled by pure instinct. I didn't look back until I hit the fence, and when I vaulted it, I dove straight into the truck and peeled out. Sadly, I kept working that farm, but I've never told a soul about this, not even my grandfather. After that, I only heard the whistling a handful more times. I'm not one for supernatural stuff, and I really try to find rational explanations for weird shit, convinced it was probably just some eccentric drifter or whatever. But honestly, I still don't know. My dad once told me a story, and I'll never forget it for a few reasons. I think it was the first story he ever told me when I was a kid. It was also the story of my grandfather's death, but that wasn't the main reason. You hear stories on TV, or sometimes overhear them in public places, people talking about ghosts and aliens, and you tell yourself it's not real, they're making it up, or they're mistaken, or they're just crazy or something. You just couldn't believe it until something happened, something that tied it all together in a way you never saw coming. Maybe it happened to you, or maybe you've heard the same story repeated from different people. The world doesn't take long to get bigger than you thought. As I said, this is the story my dad told me, but I never believed it, even though he swore up and down it was true. It wasn't until I started browsing the web that I started to believe. I began hearing other stories just like my dad's. It didn't take long for me to believe in the rake. That's not what my dad called it. Of course, he never used the internet in his life. He wouldn't have known the name everyone settled on for it. When he chose to call it anything other than it or that thing, he called it a skinwalker from an old Navajo story his grandfather told him. But I'll tell the story the way he told it to me. We were out hunting one night, killing wolves for $50 a pelt. We lived on a dairy farm in Ohio, and sometimes we'd lose a calf. We did that every night because we needed the money. Sometimes while we were out, we'd spot a deer and take it down. The landowner didn't mind, and it could feed our family for a few nights, save us some cash. Anyway, we'd finished our patrol loop, and we're heading home. Walking because back then we didn't have a car or even a four-wheeler, and we cut through the woods. That's when we found it. Blood everywhere, splattered on the trees, the grass, even the creek. At first, we thought it was a pack of wolves. We'd seen them sometimes. They'd eat carrion and then start hunting deer or livestock. The worst was when they mixed with feral dogs. But this wasn't that. When a pack of dogs, wolves, or coyotes attack something, they do it right. They pick the weak one, the sick one, the old or the young. They chase it down, corner it with no way out. Then the biggest one, the alpha, goes in for the kill. That deer would never see the alpha, maybe hear it, but not see it. It would just realize its throat was ripped open, then collapse dead. Quick, clean. That's not what happened here. Something had gone into a deer fawn's den. Wolves don't attack dens, and neither do coyotes, because they get torn apart. There were 3 of them, I think 3 bodies just shredded. You'd see a head here, a leg over there, torso way off. Predators don't do that. They don't leave scraps. Whatever did this wasn't doing it for food. It was doing it for fun. But we didn't know that. We saw a mess of bodies and figured it was something we had to deal with. I remember my dad telling me to head home. He thought it was feral dogs, but I wasn't leaving him behind, and damn it, I sure as hell wasn't walking 2 miles through the woods alone with just a .22 rifle and a pocket knife. I was only 13 then, so the .22 rifle was the only gun I could handle reliably. Dad had a shotgun, and he didn't go anywhere without it. It took a while to convince him, but eventually we started tracking whatever had done it. It wasn't hard. We just followed the blood trail. Either it had made the deer bleed out before it got away, or it dragged one for a mile. I don't know. What I do know is I'd never seen my dad scared before that night. We started hearing noises. I've been in a lot of woods in my life. I traveled all over the world, and I've never heard noises like what I heard that night. I heard everything screaming. Deer, foxes, rabbits, raccoons, birds, just terrified. Keep in mind, this was around midnight or 1 a.m. Nothing should have been awake except foxes and maybe a few owls. But they weren't just awake, they were moving. I saw a flock of birds fly straight into a tree that night, just trying to get away. We ran into a pack of wolves, almost shot a few, thinking that was what we were after, but then we saw they were running toward us. They bolted right past us, not even noticing us. Then a few deer did the same. Then rabbits, squirrels, foxes, even a couple of wild boars. These things were supposed to be eating each other, but they all just cared about getting the hell out of there. We should have realized that maybe whatever we were tracking wasn't something we should see, and wasn't something we could kill. I don't know why we didn't turn back home. Maybe we were curious. I think it was my dad's nature, charge into trouble, fight, and knowing what I know about what my dad did in the war, my nature was to stick right by him. Eventually, we came out into an open valley. It was usually a soybean field, but out of season, so just flat ground. We saw footprints. A bunch of the animals fleeing the woods had trampled the dirt, but where there was deer blood, nothing had taken a single step, like it left them there for us to find. The prints were shallow. Whatever it was didn't weigh more than 100 pounds, but that didn't mean much. A bobcat weighing about 40 pounds nearly tore my throat out once, and all that meant was it was fast and hard to hit. So we followed the footprints, and it didn't take long to figure out where it was. There was an old schoolhouse on the hilltop, half of it torn off by a tornado, and no one had lived there in years. We'd occasionally run into homeless folks or junkies there, looking for a safe spot to shoot up. We figured maybe that was it. Maybe just some sick kid tweaking. But we didn't think that for long. We got within 50 yards and heard a sound, a hiss. It was two different noises at once, a high-pitched hiss and a low growl. It did both together. We got within 20 yards and heard it again. I remember thinking it sounded like paper tearing while someone sloshed water around in a bucket. Dad looked at me, knelt down, and whispered, "Stay behind me, 'cause we're about to corner it. Any animal will fight when cornered, especially a predator, but we know from the tracks there's only one." He said it was probably a lone feral dog, maybe rabbit. The plan was to sneak up while it ate, shoot it, then keep shooting until it stopped moving, then slit its throat if we had to. If it lunged at Dad, my job was to shoot or stab to pull it off. So he crept forward, and I was right behind him, offset a bit so I could see what it was. I wished to God I'd never looked. It was hunched over a carcass, ripping into the meat and tossing aside what it didn't nibble on. Blood all over the bricks, glistening in the moonlight. It looked pale, human-like, but not quite human. It had arms and legs like a person, but it sat like a monkey hunched over. The hands weren't normal, fingers too long with claws at the ends. So we saw that, and Dad hesitated. He wasn't about to shoot a person. So he cleared his throat to try to make it turn around. I swear to God, every sound stopped dead. I'd never heard true silence before or since, but for 2 seconds, nothing, not a thing made a noise, making everything louder when it turned. It let out a shrill screech and leaped at Dad. He fired once. I think he missed. If he hit it, it didn't care. But it was on him, tearing him to pieces. I started shooting it point blank with a .22, but it barely bled. That thing, I fired 6 shots, then started clubbing it with a rifle, but it didn't budge. It didn't even register I was there. It clawed at my dad, taking chunks of flesh. It started at the torso, ripping skin, then worked its way up. It tore out his throat, his nose, his eyes. It peeled his scalp back, then started digging and ripping at half his lower jaw, the small bones in that tube in his neck, then the ribs. I don't remember exactly what happened next, but somehow Dad's knife ended up in that thing's shoulder, and my dad ended up on my back. I ran, and damn it, I ran faster than I ever had before or since. And I knew it was after me. I ended up in the woods on the far side of the areas we'd come through, heading toward the landowner's house because it was only half a mile away. I heard it hissing and groaning. I heard branches snapping and being thrown. It sounded like someone was axing down every tree I passed. Loud cracks constant, but I just didn't look back. Finally, I tripped over some gravel. I looked up, and there was the landowner with a bunch of his buddies drinking around a campfire. I screamed and cried, and they came running. I told him to call an ambulance, and he looked at me. I never forgot what he said. "What the hell is on your back?" And right as he said it, he saw one of those go-doffle flannel shirts my dad wore everywhere. That was what was left of my dad, most of his head, his torso, but nothing from the waist down. Suddenly we heard its hiss, and he grabbed me. My dad was thrown to the ground, and I hit him sobbing because I thought we could still save him. But my dad was dead before I even picked him up. He had to haul me up and toss me inside before I followed. He and his buddies all piled in, locked the doors, and got their guns ready. The landowner looked at me and asked what happened, what the hell happened, but I just didn't know how to tell him. He pieced enough together to get that something dangerous was out there. All the lights in the house came on, and if someone called the cops, they'd be there in 15 minutes. We looked out and saw it cross in front of the fire they'd built. "I don't know what it is," one guy said. "It looks like a monkey," and suddenly something crashed through the window. We shot at it, but it wasn't the thing. It was the landowner's dog, just the body, no head or legs. We started barricading the doors and windows with furniture. When we heard something in the garage, I remember one of his friends saying the garage door was open, and we heard metal and glass tearing apart. We shoved the sofa and TV against the garage door. It smashed around a bit more, but then went quiet. Not quiet like before. We could hear it moving around outside. The guys were talking, making sure their guns were ready. Someone handed me a pistol, and right as I chambered around, we heard something shatter upstairs. Then we heard it hiss again, except now it was louder and not echoing and fading, because it was inside with us. All of us rushed to the only door leading upstairs, and we got there just as it did. It cracked the door open, and 4 grown men threw themselves against it to barricade. It snaked a hand through. Someone with a shotgun took care of it, jammed the barrel right into the wrist and pulled the trigger, shearing the hand clean off. That just made it matter. It started shoving the door, clawing at it. We were on one side pushing with everything we had, and it was on the other doing the same. That wooden door wasn't going to hold. So someone yelled to duck. Suddenly the top half of the door was gone. My ears rang, and splinters were everywhere. 2 or 3 of them had emptied their loads into the upper part of the door. I don't know where it went after that. The cops showed up. I was still clinging to the door, what was left of it, and the sun came up before they pried me loose. They took me to the hospital for a while, and a lot of people talked to me, but I didn't talk back, not for a long time. When we got home, I had a job from the landowner on the farm. We didn't talk much, not about that thing, but I enlisted in the Army at 19, and he sat with me over scotch to see me off. I asked him right away what the cops said. The story they went with was a wild animal, maybe a wolf or maybe a bear migrating north or something. I asked him how they could say that when they had that hand. He stared at me stunned. He said that hand never made it back to the station. The cop who had it in his car crashed into a tree and died on impact. The hand was never found, maybe taken by animals, and the cops, when they even admitted the hand existed, said it was just a bare paw that looked like a human hand. I never spoke to the landowner again. I guess he went missing while I was in basic training, and the cops never found him. They said he owed money to some people and skipped town, but I don't buy that. I never went back to those woods, not even with the whole damn U.S. Army behind me. That's my dad's story about the rake or the skinwalker. I still don't know what to think, but as I got older and after my mom died, I don't think my dad felt like he had anything left to lose, and he probably figured he should settle an old score. He went back to those woods, I guess, and he never came home. The FBI got called in, and they put on a show for everyone involved, but I know they weren't really looking, and they never found him. In the summer of 2013, I decided it was time to go wolf hunting for those sweet pelts. I grabbed my basic stripped AR-15, the cheapest one I'd bought, bare as could be. I liked the way an AK slung across the body, so I rigged a strap to the barrel. I draped it over my right shoulder around my neck like a mailman's satchel and fired up the ATV, heading up to a mountain cabin. When I pulled in, I yanked the key from the ignition and started scoping the place out. I chucked squirrel and rabbit guts into the woods earlier to lure in predators, and when I checked the bait, it was all gone, cleaned out, and that left a weird, lingering feeling in my gut. The guy who lived on the mountain, right below the road, had just peeled out in his car right as I decided to poke around in the trees. Every step I took, I swore I heard another footfall crunching through the grass and brush. Off in the distance, a bit downhill from me, I spotted what looked like a stick figure shape, and I waved at it like you do a stranger on the trail. Then it slipped behind a tree. Okay, I thought, see ya, and I trudged back to the cabin, figuring I'd kick back with a drink for a while. That's when the distant howls started up, wolves and who knows what else. So I snatched my pistol, ready to drop any dumbass that came sniffing around. I posted up on the porch, lights off, but nothing showed. Then the howls morphed into this faint, far-off cry. help me. I glanced over at the neighbor's place. Pitch black, no lights. I hadn't even clocked that he'd split, and I stood there straining to listen. Help me, help me. Oh shit, I thought he's busted his leg or something, and he's trapped out there in the woods with the wolves. I pushed into the trees just far enough to pinpoint it coming from the ATV trail, so I hopped back on the quad with my AR and gunned it toward the voice. Hit a sharp U-bend, didn't even tap the brakes, just coasted into the turn. Right then, something dead ahead on the path screamed, help me, and panic hit me like a truck. I yanked the handlebars trying to whip around, and next thing I knew, the ATV flipped. Details are fuzzy after that, but I blacked out for maybe a minute and came to pinned under the damn thing, its weight crushing down on me. I froze, letting my eyes adjust to the dark before fumbling around. My left leg was trapped underneath, and I shoved at it with everything I had but couldn't budge the quad, like I'd suddenly packed on an extra 100 pounds in seconds. The sling tied around my neck reminded me the rifle was still there. I dragged it across my chest and clocked that my arm was bleeding pretty good. Quick check on the gun. Handguard smashed, stock cracked, but it looked like it'd still cycle. 30 rounds to keep me breathing till dawn, or somebody stumbled across me. I hunkered there, ears tuned to every creak and snap in the woods, when I caught a rustle in the grass. The silence after that was total, dead, suffocating quiet, and I swear, I'd never been more terrified in my life than in that split second. Then the rustling circled closer, and I heard it mimicking, help me, help me. No clue if I should yell back or play dead. The sounds edged in, and suddenly something loomed up on top of the ATV, like if you wiped out at a bar and the bartender's staring down at you all wrong. This thing was 9 feet tall if it was an inch, stock still like a statue. My fingers twitched for the rifle. I shouldered it and just sat there sighting down the barrel at whatever the hell it was. I didn't dare look straight on, pure. Animal dread had me locked up. Help me. It rasped again, closer. I heard claws or something scraping as it clambered over the ATV. I jerked my gaze away, but then a grip clamped onto my face. Cold, wrong. My brain flatlined, fingers scrabbling for the trigger and coming up empty. Slow as sin. It twisted my head around until I was staring right into its eyes. It looked just like folks describe him, a crack-edged golem, face all chiseled angles with hollowed cheeks and eyes sunk deep like black pits. Even now, years later, nothing's come close to the rot of its breath. It hit like spoiled meat and sulfur mixed with death. I felt the AR's muzzle brake nudge against something leathery, and that snapped me back. I had it zeroed right on its chest. My mind rebooted hard, and I unleashed the loudest scream I could muster. It screeched right back, this piercing wail that rattled my skull. I went full auto on the trigger, not squeezing, just yanking it as fast as humanly possible. The rifle barked to life, deafening me in the echo. It snatched a fistful of my hair and started hammering my head into the dirt, piston fast, while I kept racking the trigger dry. Then it ripped the gun clean out of my hands and turned it on me, clubbing my skull with the stock. All the while, it was howling at the top of its lungs, this guttural roar that drowned everything. Flashes of light started strobing through the trees. Headlights, maybe. I was teetering on the edge of blackout when a boom cut through louder than its screams. I could have sworn I saw its head burst open in a red mist. I let go of everything, wailing like a toddler tossed in an oven, and bolted straight up. Leg be damned. The rifle clattered about 10 feet away, and those lights were closing in fast. No idea if I was hallucinating my death or actually getting pulled out of the fire. Then a voice cut through, yelling my name, telling me to hang on. A hand yanked my arm. I whipped around, and there was the neighbor from down the road. He'd rolled up with this monster of a handgun, a Magnum Research BFR, big as a goddamn cannon. After that, I blacked out cold and came to the hospital, head stitched up like a football. When I finally got discharged, I cornered the neighbor and asked what the hell he'd seen out there that night. He just shrugged and said, "A bear. We get him up here all the time." Yeah, I don't buy that. I almost got my brains bashed in with my own AR by a fucking bear. It was around November of last year when I first moved to the state of Washington. Being new to the area, I loved the dense forest, so a few of my buddies, total woods junkies, decided to take me out to this remote spot. I figured, why not? I needed some time away from work anyway. I had the weekend free, so I packed my bag, cleaned my hunting rifle, and headed to my friend's place. We ended up about 25 or 30 miles from the Canadian border, deep in a forest that seemed to stretch on forever. I really dug it because my home state didn't have anything like this. There were 6 of us and 2 dogs, a Labrador and a Rottweiler. Everyone else had a hunting rifle or shotgun plus a sidearm, except me. We parked on this narrow dirt road used by forest rangers or border patrol, then hiked about 4 miles into the woods. By then, it was starting to get dark. We decided to build a fire right away to set up camp. 2 guys from the group and one of the dogs headed off to gather firewood, while the rest of us started pitching the tent. It was one of those big ones for 6 to 8 people. November up here is brutally cold, but we had it up in about 15 minutes, and the trio still hadn't come back. We shrugged it off and lit the fire using some branches around the site. That's when we started hearing noise crashing toward us, like someone sprinting full tilt. The 2 guys burst out of the trees, eyes bugging out, and the dog was nowhere in sight. They started stammering about spotting one of the other guys out in the woods acting all weird, so they tried to approach him, but every time they got close, he'd slip away. They said at one point he just vanished, then popped up right behind them about 10 feet away. They also mentioned this god-awful stench hanging around, like rotting meat mixed with spoiled milk. They tried asking what was up, but no response, and then he bolted into the woods like Usain Bolt. The dog took off after him, barking its head off, and the 2 guys lost track of both. Then the smell started fading. Off in the distance, they heard this weird hiss, followed by the dog's high-pitched yelp. Then the smell came back stronger, this time with these maniacal giggles. They turned tail and ran back to camp. They were pissed at the guy, but all of us there vouched for him being with us the whole time, so pretty soon we were all feeling uneasy, but we figured it was just some twisted prank. I said as much and got chewed out, then hit with, "Then where's the dog?" Fair point. By now, the sun had fully set, so we built the fire bigger and brought out a Coleman lantern too. Everyone huddled around the flames, cracking open MREs, guns within easy reach. About 15 minutes after full dark, the remaining dog, the Rottweiler, suddenly perked up its ears and started growling low and mean. The smell came back, and they weren't kidding about it. I'd smelled rotting deer carcasses before, and this was way worse. Then this eerie moaning started up, and you could hear branches and leaves snapping all around the perimeter of the camp. Panic ratcheted up everywhere, and the dog was going berserk. So one guy with a shotgun, Greg, stood up and fired 3 random blasts of birdshot into the woods. A god-awful screech ripped through the trees from out there and started moving away from us fast, and the smell dissipated. We waited about an hour, then decided to crash for the night with 2-man watches all around. First shift was me and another guy, Victor. The dog stuck close by the fire too. 2 hours later, nothing happened, so we woke Greg and Tom for their turn. After dozing off for a bit, I jolted awake to that smell again and Greg screaming his lungs out. We all scrambled up and stumbled outside. Greg was sweeping the edge of the woods with a headlamp, calling Tom's name. I asked what was going on, and he said they were just sitting there when they heard one of the earlier guys calling from the trees. The dog started growling and bolted toward it, and Tom went after. The dog crashed through some brush, and he lost sight, so Tom pushed into the woods. Greg had been yelling for him when he heard Tom start saying something before getting cut off. I can't leave him out there, so we all geared up, threw on clothes, grabbed a flashlight or headlamp for each person, guns, and headed out. By now, the smell was everywhere, making most of us gag, but we pressed on because we had to find Tom. We picked up a few of his footprints but lost the trail when they just stopped cold. No other prints after that, and nothing leading back to the path. One guy at the back was shining his light around and suddenly froze, let out a weird noise, then yelled, "You son of a bitch, we were worried sick about you." The rest of the group pushed through to see, and there was Tom standing about 20 feet away, but he was standing all wrong. "You okay, man? Need a hand?" He just stood there, face blank, and slowly nodded yes. A couple of us went over and slung his arms around our shoulders to help him along. That's when we noticed he was shaking, and the guy hadn't even been out there a full day. Laughter echoed from the woods, though not from him, and we didn't think much of it beyond worrying he tripped and cracked his head or something. Back at camp, we tried to get him to lie down, but he refused, so we let him sit out by the fire. A few people turned in to sleep, but Greg, Vic, and I decided to stay up and keep an eye on him. Watching him, he kept making these jerky, muscle-twitching movements every now and then. Super creepy. We figured maybe it was serious. He was mostly silent and slow to react to everything until food came up. We handed him an MRE packet to eat, and he only picked out the meat. We shrugged it off, then he stood up and started pacing around, jerky in this odd way, staring off into the woods. He asked if we wanted to head into the trees with him to grab some firewood. Besides it being pitch black out except for the fire and the massive pile we gathered on the way back, it wasn't that weird. He shrugged in that twitchy way before lurching off into the woods. By now, we were on high alert and didn't try to stop him. Greg got up a few minutes later to grab something from the tent, so I was out there with Vic when the smell hit me like a ton of bricks. I dry heaved, then started hearing this muttering and giggling. I'd never been more terrified in my life, and you could tell Vic felt the same. Greg came back out just in time to hear it clear as day, then ducked inside to rouse everyone. He froze in the tent flap and started cursing, which woke everybody up. I don't know why he was swearing, but it worked. Once everyone was up and alert, he did a head count, and you could see him go pale. What? Turns out, while he was inside, he'd done a quick tally, and there were 4 bodies in there. Someone or something had been sitting in our tent with us, and we hadn't noticed it sneak in. We lost it completely at that point, total panic, and everyone started demanding where Tom was. By now, the muttering was louder, and you could hear this jumble of nonsense shuffling through the woods. We heard Tom's voice calling from the trees to come help him, but it was off-key, and every so often he'd start giggling. We cranked the fire as high as it would go and sat around it with every lantern blazing, weapons hot, until the sun came up. The second there was enough light, we doused the flames, broke camp, and bolted for the vehicles. We started hearing the giggles again, and the smell came back, so we just hauled ass. When we got to the cars, they were trashed, claw marks all over them. Most of the windows shattered, seats ripped to shreds. We just needed them to run, so we jammed the keys in the ignitions and heard that sweet internal combustion purr to life. We tossed our gear in and peeled out. We didn't talk about it for months, and most of us still don't even acknowledge it happened. One guy in our group said later that he spotted Tom at the edge of the woods watching us go, and apparently he had this creepy grin on his face. And I believe him. I know I'll never go that deep camping again without at least more than 6 people, but I swear that was my first run-in with skinwalkers. I'm 21, a senior in college up in Connecticut. I live in a semi-rural area, about 20 minutes from the nearest supermarket or fast food joint. I go to school in Washington, D.C., not the pretty part, but the kind where junkies are a real issue and the cops are more laid back than they'd like to admit. I've seen my share of shit in life. So up front, I'm no muscle-bound giant. I'm 6 feet 1 inch, about 1.85 m, and 240 pounds, around 109 kilograms. Mostly muscle, and God, I could stand to drop 15 pounds, about 7 kilograms. I like my smokes, my booze, and my eat. Sue me. As a good student, I picked a real major, straight-up accounting. I intern at a mid-sized PR firm doing bookkeeping work for $20 an hour. College ain't cheap, so I deliver pizzas at night after the office shuts down. It's this cheap-ass pizza joint with an insane delivery radius, about 20 minutes from my place and 5 from the beach. My house is north of the shop, and we deliver another 50 minutes north from there. Hell, I'm typing this at work right now, in between scrutinizing the fine print on a client's contract to make sure we squeeze every damn penny out of them. Trust me, they pull every trick to shortchange you. Anyway, the farther north you go from the pizza shop, the more rural it gets. I work till close, and this went down around 9:45 p.m. I was in the back folding boxes like a good boy when the counter girl pokes her head in with a delivery slip. She says the customer sounded weird on the phone, like talking through a fan or cupped hands, and he kept gurgling. My DC experience kicked in right away, making me think tweaker, if you catch my drift, even if out here it's probably more like some Benadryl head. On autopilot, figuring some awkward interaction ahead, I glance at the address. It's basically in the middle of nowhere. I'm a little pissed because I don't want to drive that far, but whatever. Not to mention, this is the weirdest ticket I've ever seen. The guy ordered a large with anchovies, ground beef, ham, sausage, pepperoni, etc. Straight up $15 worth of toppings on one pie. I double-check with a counter girl, and she says she thinks so. She couldn't hear him great, so she did her best. She's like 16, so I cut her slack, probably daydreaming when she took the call. Fine, I'll call to confirm. I dial, it rings 5, 10, 20, 30 times, no answer. I hang up and redial. This time, the number you have reached is not in service or something, no voicemail set up. Click. All right then. My boss decides to make the pie anyway, and we'll deal with it later. I run another delivery to this fat hilarious dude and a couple who invite me in for a drink, but I don't drink or smoke on the clock. I hope by the time I get back, someone's taken that weird order. And surprise, no one has, and it's my turn again. Annoyed, I grab the pizza and hop in the car. I punch the address into my phone. Off on a side street next to this park, the locals call open space, even though it's straight up 500 acres, about 202 hectares of dense woods. About 25 minutes out, basically the edge of our range. I crank up some dubstep and blast the turbo subwoofer in my Subaru, then gun it down that road. If you're not from the sticks, this is hard to explain. Winter in the woods is creepy as hell. Never any noise unless something bigger than a cat's prowling around. Just you in total silence. Finally, I pull up to the address. There are a few houses on the street, but they're on like 5-acre, about 2 hectares lot, so spaced way out. I hunt for 1134. I pass 1130, then a long stretch of nothing, then pick up at 1144. What the fuck? I just want to wrap this up and hit the next run without getting jumped by some tweaker over a pizza. I try calling the number again, rings and rings, then it stops ringing. Wait, someone picked up but no voice. Instead, I hear this buzzing or humming. It hooks into my car speakers and amps up till I hang up so I don't blow the system. The car windows are starting to fog up now. I pull over between 2 houses, and as soon as I crack the window, this rotten garbage stench hits me, like driving through Newark, New Jersey. Nasty. I put it in drive and creep toward the next house up, trying to outrun the smell. At the end of the driveway, there's a lamppost with a globe on top. Plan is to pull into this one and knock, ask if maybe they fat-fingered the house number on the phone. That tracks with this kind of folks. I'm about 100 feet out when I see someone step out of the shadows into the light under the post. I breathe a sigh of relief, thank God. It's the guy who ordered. I expect him to be staggering, hunched over, totally out of it, but he's pretty calm. I stop about 10 feet from him. He's in this huge black coat, like 3 sizes too big, even though he's probably 5 inches, about 13 centimeters, taller than me. I don't look right at him at first. I grab the pizza and step out, then snag the receipt in case it's cash and I need change. I say, "Hey man, sorry for the wait and the calls. Long way out here." No response. I realize I should clock him, check for red flags and that insane stench, but I know it's not trash day. I set the pizza on the roof, and he's just standing there under the light across from it. Finally, I pay enough attention to really look at him. The guy's basically a giant, barefoot, jeans ripped and filthy everywhere. I try to make out his face, and his eyes are sunken deep. I can't even see pupils from here in this light. They're like black holes. That's when real panic starts creeping in, 'cause the dude still hasn't moved or said a word. I freeze the routine and just stare at him. He's staring back with those freaky eyes. His head's kind of swaying side to side, but jerky as hell, not smooth at all, like a car door that sticks halfway open and you nudge it and it stops dead. I watch his head do that, no pattern, for like 10 seconds. I'm getting way more uneasy with the smell, the head twitch, the eyes, and him totally ignoring me. I'm rooted to the spot, and so is he. Without breaking eye contact, I fish my phone from my pocket and hold it level with the roof so I can watch him and the screen at once. Curiosity's overriding everything, so I pull up the recent call log and hit redial on his number. The phone starts ringing, but I don't hear it. Wait, I do. It's coming from the silence of the woods. I hear this faint, distant ringtone like 50 yards, about 46 m, off in the trees, and I'm kicking myself right then, nearly pissing my pants. The guy just stands there still doing the head thing, but I swear I see him grin. Finally, I muster the guts to say, can you come grab this? Also, I think you dropped your phone or something when you were hiding a body or whatever in the woods. I laugh nervously, still figuring he's deep into prescription pills or something. And I see his mouth open, head still twitching, feet planted firm on the ground. He lets out this low, rapid grunt, then high, then low again, and it's soft, like someone clearing their throat. At this point, I'm primed to bolt for the driver's seat if I have to and just peel out. And right as I'm about to hit redial, I hear him say, "That phone's not mine." The pause between "that phone not" and "mine" is way too long. "That phone not" sounds like one word. "Mine" jumps up an octave. My brain's at DEFCON 5, full meltdown. My knees buckle, and I'm about to pass out. I shove the pizza farther across the roof, away from me, and finally stammer. "Look, man, you're freaking me out. I got a .45 and not even $20 on me. Take this and let me go." As I say it, that head twitch stops. His eyes go pitch black and burn holes through me, and he opens his mouth again. What? I'm stunned. That's his voice. The phone was his. The guy lurches toward my car. Not steps, but this massive muscle spasm propels him forward. "The phone is mine," he repeats. I'm about to cry now. He spasms again, closer to the car. "The phone's not mine anymore." I babble incoherently, then snap out of it and yell, "I'm calling the cops if you don't back off." I see that creepy grin split his face, and without moving his mouth, I hear him speak in a totally different voice, one I've never heard. "Go away, stop following me." "I'll call the cops." In one big final spasm, the thing reaches out, snags the pizza off the roof, and sets down a few round coins, quarters, I realize later, right on the roof. They're ringed in this dark liquid spreading out across the metal. I don't even think, just dive into the car and gun it down the driveway. I leave the pizza warmer bag behind. Hell, I leave everything, even don't fully shut the door. I blast down the road at 80 miles per hour, about 129 kilometers per hour for a quarter mile, then whip a U-turn, because I don't want to get any more lost with that psycho out there. I tear back past where I was, and he's gone. Finally, I hit the end of the road and the stop sign to merge onto the main drag. I look right to check, then left, and that thing's face is 12 inches, about 30 centimeters, from mine where I'm craning my neck. I tactical heart attack my way out of there and floor it. Eventually, I make it back to the pizza shop, shaking like a leaf. I light up to calm down, something I never do on the job. I stumble in the front door. "Hey, the dude at the open space house just called back. Says you forgot his food, but he only ordered pizza. Wants you to come get it." And I start bawling. I check my phone, tossed across the car in my panic. 14 missed calls from his number. All voicemails empty except the last one. All I hear is heavy breathing and low grunts. I ugly cry in front of the cute but oblivious counter girl. I sit there for 10 minutes trying to compose myself, then remember the change he left on the roof. I slowly head back out to the car and flick on the flashlight. The roof's coated in this weird slimy fluid, but it reeks like copper. I puke and wedge in the gap between the trunk and rear window. I spot the quarters. They're glued in this disgusting maple syrup goop, and stuck to the liquid is a tiny scrap of soft tissue. I pop the trunk, and my blood runs cold. There's a streak of the stuff from the windshield all the way to the passenger door. That fucking thing tried to get in my door while I was right there at the stop sign. I stumble back inside, crying harder. I tell the counter girl to try calling the number for me. She dials over and over, but it goes straight to voicemail. The next morning, I give the number to my uncle, a police captain a few towns over. He says it's a burner cash bot, basically untraceable, and seems shut off. These days, I sleep with the lights on. I'm 23, traipsing through the woods in the Ozarks, Arkansas. Yep, that's exactly right. With a bunch of new gear I'd scrimped and saved for over a few months. Boots, a tactical vest, even a mil-spec gas mask. It was like Christmas, because I was out here and wanted to field test some personal prototypes. I've got my nugget on me. It wouldn't do shit to a big bear, but it'd ruin the day of any snake, feral dog, or bobcat in a heartbeat. I've got a stack of speed loaders and 2 homemade clipazines, and I want to test them in the pouch. I stuffed a few roll-up targets in the loop and a lightweight survival kit. Compass, topo map, space blanket, spare undies, MRE, canteen, and camelback full kit. Basically prepped for the inevitable invasion of whatever. I'm having a blast hopping around the forest, fiddling with the field of view through the mask, checking the reliability of the clipazines, and just generally geeking out. I wander along a dry creek bed and figure it's time for some guerrilla tactics practice. It's late summer, early fall, so no worries about gear getting wet, cause the creek's non-existent. My stuff's more endangered by my own sweat than water. After triple-checking safety, I run a sleight-of-hand series and scramble up the hillside with a full survival loadout. Needless to say, I'm huffing and puffing quick. I stand there panting in the dry creek bed and decide to check my position with a topo map and compass to orient back home. Right in the middle of reorienting, I catch a whiff. At first I think it's my own sweat, but the stink ramps up fast into something way worse. An undercurrent of dark rot, a deep animal musk baseline, a symphony of living garbage laced with garlic and tempeh, and a thick black layer of something between skunk spray and onion. I snap into straight-up operator mode, swallow an Adderall from the pouch for extra focus, and yank the clipazine out of the nugget. It seems solid, but if I'm shooting something, I prefer no jam risks. The smell's making me queasy, nearly horking up that Adderall. It's that potent. By now, whatever the source is, it's mobile and closing in on me. Fuck it, I yank the mask up from around my neck onto my face. It helps a bit, but the mask isn't 100% sealed around the joints, so a hint of the stench still seeps in. I move cautious and slow along the creek bed toward the shallowest slope up, listening for snapping branches or animal sounds from above. I'm positive I hear something rustling around out there, and it sounds bigger than what my nugget can handle. It's this constant snuffling, groaning, and uncoordinated munching on bark and leaves, all mixed with the smell. My brain jumps straight to Big Bear, and I say it loud, maybe even to a rabbit if it stinks that bad. Let me tell you about Ozark big bears, straight from my dad's mouth. My old man lived in the Ozarks 58 years, and in that time, only two things ever rattled him: the challenge of fatherhood and big bears. According to him, the native black bears were hunted near extinction in the 40s and 50s, and to fix it, the ANRC, NRCS, and Arkansas Game and Fish Commission released 250 bears into the Ozarks and Ouachita Mountains. Their website insists they were all black bears. My dad insists that's bullshit. According to him, more than a few of the released ones were brown bears. They bred with a handful of surviving local blacks and the reintroduced blacks, and thanks to this thing called hybrid vigor, the offspring came out bigger and meaner than their parents, and goddamn, do they breed like rabbits? When I asked for proof, he just stepped off the porch, headed upstairs, and came back with a manila folder labeled BB. He pulled out a few Polaroids and told me to look. I saw this big black and brown thing rooting around the clothesline. Dad pointed to the clothesline about 50 feet from us, strung between two posts about 5 to 6 feet off the ground. That's the same line in the photo. The thing's shoulder was a belch away from the line, even though it was farther back in the background. I flipped through the others, one digging in a trash can, another barely hiding behind a tree. All a bit shaky, details fuzzy, but I was convinced. My dad told me two things about avoiding big bear attacks. Big bears are dumb as fuck, something about them being high, which makes them more dangerous than other bears, because they don't fear you. It also makes them reek, and you'll smell him from a mile away. If you smell a big bear, get in the house, upstairs, but bring a 12-gauge shotgun and some deer slug rounds. If you see a big bear and you're not home or don't have a loaded shotgun with slugs, climb a tree if you can. They're faster than you, so running's pointless. I tell you all that because after 23 years, I finally proved my dad wrong about something. Well, half wrong. There's something in the Ozarks that matches his big bear photos. But whatever they are, they're definitely not bears. So back to my story. I should have just hunkered in the creek bed and waited for it to wander off, but the light was slanting through the trees, and no matter how bad Dad made big bears sound, I sure as hell didn't want to get stuck with a rabid fucker after dark. Instead, I opted to climb the opposite bank from the creek. I had to scramble over a few big boulders and half-crouch, half-lean up the hillside, but I figure if something comes, it'll be extra cover against whatever's out there. I catch glimpses of it over my shoulder a few times while climbing, but this is my first good look. I just can't stop staring. Like I said in my last post, this ain't a bear-like, but not. I've lived sci-fi my whole life and even have Bar's Guide to Extraterrestrials from my late awesome grandma, so when I first spot this thing, my nerd brain immediately goes, oh, a solider, except no. It looks like a solider, a grizzly bear, and a sloth had a threesome on a garbage heap to spawn it. It's got this long prognathous muzzle like a short trunk, massive angular shoulders, feet that look like furry manhole covers, and a body like a hairy blimp. The fur is that same sooty black and dull brown as in the photos, all matted and clumped with filth. I mean, I stare at it that long, soaking in every detail, trying to process for a solid 2.5 minutes, and somehow it doesn't clock me. Goddamn, these things are dumb. I remember this fleeting wave of relief. If it hasn't spotted me while I was crawling out of that rock crevice, maybe it won't notice me slipping away from it. It'll sound ridiculous, but I shit myself. Then the thing stops. My breath stops. My heart stops. The only sound in the woods right then are my goddamn shit echoing back, and my nostrils flaring under the assault of its stench. It's like slow-mo as the thing turns its head, looks back at me, sniffs the air, and rears up. It had been rustling around, hunched low to the ground the whole time. What I thought were shoulder blades were its goddamn elbows. It could tie its shoes without bending over, but its feet would probably crush the Air Jordans to powder. They're like trash can lids. It sniffs the air again and coughs or barks like it's asking me a question. It sounds like Gorp. I swear on my mom's grave, that's the noise, Gorp. So there I am, the idiot who didn't listen to Dad. Lord of the cringy, awkward shits. Literally shitting while trying to sneak away from a goddamn Gorp. I am center mass and fire. It isn't talking to the Gorp, because hey, if you're about to die, at least give the thing that kills you a dumb name in your head, right? Instead, the shot thuds, if that's a word, kicking up dust and fur as it flails, and luckily, the Gorp actually startles from the impact. I wait for blood. I guess GPS typo mint Gorp is covered in so much filthy, mangy fur that over time, poor hygiene gives him natural armor, because I don't see any red. What it does is rear up and roar at me, this low rumble that decides my guts that's a warning, because it's laying bricks enough to build a barricade. I rack the slide and fire another, this time at its ugly sloth bear elephant face, and this one thocks, and so does the dust a few feet to the left of the thing, because it jerks off its skull. The thing just stands there looking at me like it's too dumb to realize it could just wade into the creek and grab my face while I pump useless rounds into it one after another. I yell at it and fire a third shot in whatever direction, trying to scare it off. Gorp or Gorth or Big Bear or whatever, it drops to all fours, staggers, and charges me. Then I do the 10 and bail. It works. I stand there till the sky shifts from blue to orange before snapping out of it and tactically withdraw home. When I get back, I tell my dad the story. I probably should have mentioned I was visiting him for a few days. He probably smelled the big bear on me anyway, so lying's pointless. When I get to the part about what a real big bear actually is, he refuses to believe me, then gets pissed at me, locks the door, and holes up upstairs for the rest of the visit. I had to goddamn bring him beers from downstairs. When he finally starts talking, the weird thing is, no matter how scared he was and how odd it was to see him like that, I wasn't scared myself. I remember clear as day, not a bit of fear. I guess you could say I was just too curious or thrilled to be scared, because if I was, I'd have just bolted, and maybe I'd be typing this from inside a year-old Gorp shit pile. If I had to guess, that Adderall I popped probably kept me from flipping to panic run home mode. Yeah, that's how I met a Gorp and survived. In 2012, as a 22-year-old ecology student with thick, clunky glasses, I landed my dream internship, tracking wildlife around Pymatuning Lake in Pennsylvania. Back then, I was bursting with enthusiasm. My backpack always slung over my shoulders stuffed with recording gear, camera traps, maps, ready to explore every nook and cranny of the dense forest. The job mostly involved solo camping, jotting down bird calls, animal tracks, and sometimes sitting for hours on end waiting for a deer or bear to wander by. The first few days passed peacefully, even romantically in their own rugged way, amid the vast expanse of nature. But then October rolled in. The air grew damper, with persistent drizzles that seemed to linger forever. That night, I was camped deep in the woods, miles from the main road. The rain pattered softly on the tent fly, creating this oddly soothing lullaby. I'd switched off my flashlight, trying to drift off after a long day of hiking. The steady rain, the nocturnal insects, everything felt routine. Then another sound crept in. Not the wind whistling, not a branch snapping. It was scratching, gentle at first, then occasionally sharper, right outside the thin fabric of my tent. My heart pounded. At first, I told myself it was a bear. This area had bears. But the scratching didn't sound like a bear. Bears claw harder, more forcefully. This was deliberate, sharper, like someone dragging long fingernails across canvas. I lay perfectly still, holding my breath. The scratching was crystal clear now. Right by my head, I could feel the faint vibration through the fabric. Fighting back a scream, I slowly reached for my flashlight. Click. The beam pierced through the nylon, shining straight into whatever was out there. A shadow. Gaunt, lanky, flitting past quickly. I couldn't make out the shape, but it seemed not like any animal I'd seen. It looked upright. And then it was gone. I exhaled shakily, my stomach still knotted. Probably just my imagination. Or a curious deer. But a few minutes later, the scratching started again. This time, not on the tent. It came from the direction of the dying campfire, just a few meters away. A chilling scrape on the nearby tree trunk. I risked a peek through the tent's zipper flap, cracking it just an inch, and I saw it. The creature. Emaciated, its skin pallid as if it had never seen sunlight. It hunched by the fire pit, its fingers elongated, tipped with razor-sharp claws. The most terrifying part was the eyes. Pure white, no pupils, no emotion, just two blank, glowing sockets staring into the void. But I swear it knew I was there. It turned its head slowly toward the tent, even though those eyes stayed fixed ahead. It didn't do anything. Just stood there for a moment, then slowly raked its claws down the nearby oak trunk, carving long, deep gouges. Not for food. It felt like a message. A warning. I zipped the flap shut tight, my heart slamming against my ribs. I lay there trembling, listening to the rain, the horrific scraping on the bark, and the sensation of those milky eyes tracking my every twitch. The tent poles seemed ready to collapse from my shaking. I didn't dare close my eyes, terrified that when I opened them, it'd be right there in front of me. Seconds stretched into minutes, each one an eternity. I had no idea if it was still out there. I didn't dare look again. All I could do was pray for dawn. When the first rays of sunrise filtered through the canopy, I waited even longer, then finally eased the zipper open a crack. Nothing. Just those deep gouges on the oak trunk, a stark testament to the nightmare. The damp ground showed no clear footprints. I packed up the tent and gear as fast as I could, hands still quivering. Abandoning the recording equipment, I grabbed my backpack and bolted through the forest, branches whipping my face, mud sucking at my boots. I ran non-stop until I spotted the distant glow of highway lights. I dropped out after that. I couldn't bear the thought of returning to the woods, camping alone, facing whatever lurked in the shadows. Now I work a desk job, glued to a computer screen all day, with nothing to do with the wild anymore. Nearly a decade has passed, and I haven't seen it since. But those gouges on the oak that night, and that soulless white stare, still haunt me. Every time I hear a scratch at the door, whether it's the wind or the house cat, my heart clenches, and I'm right back in that drizzly October night.